Very good evening. I'm Christian Fraser in London. Tonight, a hugely symbolic moment. The Commander-in-Chief, Joe Biden, addressing the nation to formally put an end to the United States' longest war. Last night, it was the Pentagon that confirmed the details of the final withdrawal, the President preferring to put some space between the operational details and the much bigger, more poignant questions America is asking of itself and of their President. What was it for if the Taliban are now back in power?
By the time I came to office, the Taliban was in its strongest military position since 2001, controlling or contesting nearly half of the country, where we were left with a simple decision: either follow through on the commitment made by the last administration and leave Afghanistan, or say we weren't leaving and commit another tens of thousands more troops going back to war. That was the choice, the real choice. The decision to end the military airlift operations at Kabul airport was based on the unanimous recommendation of my civilian and military advisors.
In his speech, Joe Biden put the decision to pull out in a much larger context. America, he says, will now realign its foreign policy away from the post-9/11 conflict.
We succeeded in what we set out to do in Afghanistan over a decade ago. Then we stayed for another decade. It was time to end this war. This is a new world. The terror threat has metastasized across the world, well beyond Afghanistan. The fundamental obligation of a president, in my opinion, is to defend and protect America. Not against threats of 2001, but against the threats of 2021 and tomorrow.
But there are big questions that remain unanswered on the fate of 100 to 200 Americans who are still in Afghanistan and were left behind. How will the White House engage with the Taliban? And on the day Osama bin Laden's right-hand man is reported to have returned to Afghanistan, what of the counter-terrorism challenge ahead?
I take responsibility for the decision. Now some say we should have started mass evacuation sooner. And couldn't this have been done in a more orderly manner? I respectfully disagree. Imagine if we'd begun evacuations in June or July, bringing in thousands of American troops and evacuating more than 120,000 people in the middle of a civil war.
Let's go straight to the White House. Our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue is there for us. Throughout the events of the past 3 or 4 weeks, Gary, there have been lots of questions of this president about the withdrawal, whether it was handled properly, whether it could have been done sooner, whether he could have prevented the loss of life. But again tonight, he wanted to return to the bigger question.
He did, although he did spend some time defending what had happened over the last few weeks and last few months. For example, and I thought this was quite striking, on those Americans still left in Afghanistan, he'd gone away and asked someone to check how many times the State Department and diplomats had reached out to Americans. And he said that had happened 19 times since March, trying to get people to leave the country. In other words, we did our bit, we did our best to try and contact these people. So there is some sensitivity around that. But you're right, the bigger message here was we can't do this again. We can't keep doing this kind of thing again. If we perceive a threat in another country, we have to deal with it, but we can't go and find other people's insurgent wars, and we can't go and do what he called nation building again. So that, I think, is a new kind of Bidenism, if you like. It's something we've known he's thought for a long time, particularly on things like Afghanistan. We know he was against the surge under President Obama, and now here we have him setting out what approaches, I think, a kind of a doctrine. And people will ask, well, what will America do around the world in future? In what way will it engage militarily if necessary? And in what way will it cooperate with its allies who feel very sore after this process because they feel they simply weren't involved in a unilateral decision by the United States?
Why do you think he did it this way? Why did he let the Pentagon announce the withdrawal last night and put 24 hours between the last plane leaving and the comments that he made tonight?
I think, look, there was a lot of sensitivity around the potential for more horrific, devastating attacks on the troops and the civilians around the airport. I think they were concerned about that. Bear in mind, this was a bit of a surprise yesterday, wasn't it? The fact they got them out not on the 31st, but before the 31st had actually come around. I think they're quite pleased they managed to do that without another sort of spectacular, complex attack to deal with. So I think there's something to do with that. But also I think he wanted to do it on his own terms, in a kind of clear and concise way like this, once everyone was out of the country. And they've clearly been thinking about this for some time, because they know that Afghanistan may no longer be a military problem for them. There are no soldiers there, no diplomats there. But Afghanistan will continue to be a political problem. Here at home, for example, Christian, the Republicans are starting to promise to make it an issue for the 2022 midterm elections. Those on the sort of Trumpian wing of the Republican Party already starting to stir up fears and anxieties about tens of thousands of people from Afghanistan arriving in this country, suggesting many of them, President Trump said, were terrorists, wouldn't be vetted properly, would be coming to a community near you. So Afghanistan has not gone away as a problem for Joe Biden, but he will feel that one of the big elements of American foreign policy that was wrong has now been put right, and that he can turn his sort of attention to the other areas, other challenges that face America, like a rising power in the shape of China, an existing obstreperous power like Russia, and all the other things he has to deal with, you know, things like climate change, things like sort of cyber warfare, all these other huge challenges that are on his